Good evening. This is the October 29th meeting of the San Francisco County Transportation Authority Community Advisory Committee, or CAC. I'm Kat Siegel, chair of the CAC. Our vice chair is Naj Daniels. I'd like to thank our clerk, Amy Sayung, and our operator, Daniela Rible, for this meeting. Madam Clerk, please do a roll call to ensure we have quorum, and then please read your announcement about public comment.
CAC members, when I call your name, please say present to ensure quorum. Member Bars? Bars absent. Vice Chair Daniels?
Vice Chair Daniels present.
Daniels present. Member Ford? Ford absent. Member Imadadeen? Imadadeen absent. Member Kim? Member Levine?
Levine present.
Okay, thank you. Kim present, Levine present. Member Margarita? Margarita absent. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales present.
Milford Rosales present. Member Ortega?
Ortega present.
Ortega present. Chair Siegel?
Siegel present.
Siegel present. Chair, we have quorum also. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda via telephone by calling one of the numbers listed on the front of the agenda or joining the meeting through the Zoom link. Once you join, you will be able to listen to the meeting as a participant. To make public comment on an item when the item is called, members of the public participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9. Do not press *9 again or you will be removed from the queue. When you are asked to unmute yourself, press *6 or the unmute button to unmute yourself. The live operator will advise that you are allowed 2 minutes to speak. When your 2 minutes are up, we will move on to the next caller. Best practices are to speak slowly, clearly, and turn down the volume of any televisions or radios around you. Thank you. That concludes my announcement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll move on to item 2, which is the chair's report. Thank you to Amy Sayung for sharing the executive director's report from yesterday's board meeting, and congratulations to Vice Chair Daniels and Member Milford Rosales, who have been reappointed to the CAC for another 2-year term. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, has released the draft Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus, a long-range plan outlining the region's transportation, housing, and climate strategies and investments. MTC will host several virtual public webinars, including one in San Francisco on Wednesday, October 29th from 6 to 7:30 p.m., which is unfortunately right now during this meeting. However, you can visit planbayarea.org/draftplan for more information or tune in to the November 18th Transportation Authority board meeting at 10 a.m. where MTC will provide an update on Plan Bay Area. The SFMTA's new speed safety camera program is showing strong early results in reducing speeding along key corridors. Since its launch in March 2025, speeding has dropped by an average of 72% across 15 monitored sites, with all locations now below their posted limits. Nearly 20,000 fewer vehicles are speeding each day, and 2/3 of drivers who received a warning have not reoffended. While full crash data are still pending, early indicators show the program is effectively improving safety and advancing San Francisco's Vision Zero goals. The Transportation Authority contributed sales tax funds to support education and outreach for this critical pilot program. Before switching to meeting management announcements, staff has informed me that they anticipate agendizing an update on the local revenue measure at the November 18th board meeting and our November 19th CAC meeting. CAC members, staff, and public commenters in the room, please be sure to speak directly into the microphone so folks attending virtually can hear you. Please try to limit your questions to a max of 2 questions per agenda item. We've been having some really packed agendas recently and want to make sure everyone is able to ask questions. And if there's time after everyone has done their 2, we can come back to you, but do want to be sensitive to folks' time. CAC members and folks in the hearing room, please turn off or silence all electronic devices and computer notifications during the meeting. That's it for announcements. Are there any questions or comments from CAC members on the chair's report? Not seeing any. Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment on the chair's report? Seeing anyone. Operator, is there any remote public comment on the chair's report?
There is no public comment for this item.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 5 comprise the consent agenda. Staff is not planning to present, but is available to answer questions. Do any CAC members have any questions or comments on tonight's consent agenda? Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment on the consent agenda? Operator, is there any remote public comment on the consent agenda?
There's no remote public comment for the consent agenda.
Great, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve item 3 and 4 on the consent agenda? Moved by Vice Chair Daniels. Seconded by Member Milford Rosales. Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve items 3 and 4, the minutes and CAL grants agreements, respectively on the consent agenda, Member Bars?
Bars, aye.
Bars, aye. Vice Chair Daniels?
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Member Ford? Ford, absent. Member Imadadeen? Imadadeen, absent. Member Kim?
Kim, aye.
Kim, aye. Member Levine?
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita? Margarita, absent. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega?
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel?
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 7 ayes. The consent agenda is approved.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to item 6, adopt a motion of support to allocate $4 million with conditions and appropriate $1 million in Prop L funds for 3 requests. And we have a presentation from Transportation Planner Erin Slichter. Welcome, Ms. Slichter.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Siegel, Vice Chair Daniels, committee members. I'm Erin Slichter, Transportation Planner in Policy and Programming. I will get right into this. Our first of 3 requests for this month is for $2 million for environmental studies for the Cable Car Barn rehabilitation project. The Cable Car Barn was built in 1888 and last rehabilitated in 1984. Rehabilitation and upgrades are needed at this time to improve working conditions and cable car operations at the facility. The full rehabilitation project will upgrade the facility's electrical system and make other capital improvements, including replacing the roof, cranes, and elevators, adding accessibility improvements, and doing a seismic retrofit. The current cost estimate for the full rehabilitation is $274 million. This $2 million requested this month would be used to achieve federal and state environmental clearance for the full scope of the rehabilitation and to set up discrete components to advance as funding becomes available down the road. Work in the environmental phase will include field explorations and geotechnical borings to assess the condition of the ground and soil. These measurements will guide recommendations for the design of subsequent project components. SFCTA has identified that the first priority to move forward in the overall rehabilitation is the electrical system, which is currently running on obsolete infrastructure. We have about $3.5 million in Prop L funds programmed next fiscal year for design of the electrical system upgrade, and we expect that MTA would return in the spring next year to request those funds. The full cost of upgrading the electrical system is about $25 million. The next request for this evening is for $1 million for construction of segment 4 of the Yerba Buena Island multi-use pathway, and that's integrated with the Treasure Island Road Improvements Project. So as you've heard in previous cycles, the multi-use pathway, or MUP, is a bicycle and pedestrian connection between the east span of the Bay Bridge and the new ferry terminal on Treasure Island. It's being constructed in 4 segments, so this request is for segment 4, integrated with Treasure Island Road Improvements. This $1 million request for local funds contributes to an overall $38 million total construction cost that's made up of federal, state, and local sources. The elements to be constructed with these funds include the MUP, a transit lane to allow buses to bypass traffic and more quickly get onto the Bay Bridge, as well as other roadway improvements. And you'll hear more about the MUP and next steps for construction from my colleague Carl Holmes in a later item. Our third and final request today is for $2 million for design and construction of the fiscal year 26 school traffic calming program. This request would fund walk audits at 10 schools, as well as the planning and implementation of improvements identified through those walk audits. SFMTA will select the 10 schools after enrollment data becomes available later this year. The criteria used to select schools to do walk audits at are that enrollment data, collision history within a quarter mile of the school, and data on how many students live within a walkable radius of the school. Other factors that are considered include existing infrastructure, whether the schools are in equity priority communities, and distribution of walk audits among districts. The recommendations from these walk audits are typically low cost, easy to implement improvements like turn restrictions, speed humps, and paint and sign upgrades. And in the packet, you can find more detail on the school traffic calming program since its first sales tax allocation in 2019, including information on the schools that have done walk audits and the improvements made to each school area. We do have a few special conditions for the school traffic calming program allocation request, so I'll go over those on this slide. The first condition is that SFMTA comply with an enhanced monitoring, reporting, and oversight protocol. And along with that oversight protocol, out of the $2 million requested, about $1.75 million for construction will be held on reserve to be released by the board once SFMTA has finished the walk audits, identified improvements, and made a presentation to the CAC and board demonstrating progress on delivering on the backlog of traffic calming improvements in this program. Similar to the application-based traffic calming program, the school traffic calming program has experienced some challenges with timely project delivery, including design changes at the request of the fire department, limited staff resources, and a higher than anticipated bid from a contractor that had an impact on the delivery of recommendations from the 2022 cycle. So given those challenges and also just the number of open grants that we have to the school traffic calming program, we are instituting the enhanced monitoring and oversight protocol to try to ensure that work is completed in a timely manner and that MTA has secured the resources necessary to deliver on walk audit recommendations. The protocol is very similar to the one we instituted this past summer for application-based traffic calming, and it essentially involves monthly meetings between TA and MTA staff to check in about program delivery. There are also more details on the oversight protocol in your packet. And with that, I can take questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Do any CAC members have any questions or comments on this item? Member Bars?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So on the walk audits for schools, I think I'm butchering the name of this. I'd like to understand, well, I'd love a few examples of what successful walk audits have looked like in the past. And also I'd love to get a sense of how we know they're successful. Sounds like project delivery is one aspect, but I'm curious about the safety statistics. Why don't we start there, and then I have a second question, and then I will have no more questions.
I'm inviting Project Manager Damon Curtis from MTA to respond.
Thank you, Damon Curtis, SFMTA, Traffic Calming Program Manager, and also encompasses school walk audits. So the last little part of your question you threw in there, safety data. We do not have safety data that that looks back on these schools after we've implemented improvements. What I will say is, the way we measure success is by initially the participation that we get in the walk audit itself, types of interaction and feedback we get from walk participants, the school itself, parents and students as well. And then, really, it varies so much by school location about what we end up being able to do to improve the safety around the school. But I would just say that we typically identify, several dozen improvements, ranging from painting a crosswalk, installing a new sign, to putting in an RFB, or making signal timing changes, and implementing traffic calming around the school. So it really runs the gamut, and I think the success is really in implementing those improvements that we identified during the walk.
Okay, and just clarifying, when you say participation, you mean having people accompany you for the walk? Is that what that means? People coming with you for the walk?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it really encompasses, when I say participation, I mean how engaged the school and the school community are when we're planning the walk, as well as how engaged they are during the walk and after. Because after the walk itself, we put together a detailed draft report, distribute that to all the walk participants, and we ask for their feedback. And we get a lot of feedback, so people are really engaged in which is understandable, right, in the safety of their children going to school. So it's a very successful program in my estimation, and I think that based on all the feedback that I've gotten from parents and from school staff, it's a very welcome thing. I mean, we can only do 10 a year, and if we had the money and the staff to do it, we could do 50 a year based on the demand.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my second question, is, so I noticed the discussion of picking the sites in December and referencing needing to collect SFUSD enrollment data. This makes sense to me. What about private schools?
So we just recently got data for public schools from the school district. We have a resource for private school data as well. I didn't get an update before I came over here tonight, but we have made that request as well, and we've gotten that data in the past, so we fully expect to get it again. So that data will be collected and put into our model to rank the schools in terms, and that data is used for the metric that measures crashes within a quarter mile of the school, and the enrollment factors into the exposure rate, right? So that's one of the data points that we use to rank the schools.
Okay, and can people nominate schools or no?
Well, I mean, certainly we're open to receiving all types, any information that people want to give us. If people want to give us information that we may not be privy to about some particular aspect of their school, that can go into our decision making in terms of selecting a school for a particular year. And it also, if for whatever reason school isn't selected for a walk audit, but we learn about some particular problem, it can be addressed other ways. It's not like it will go unresolved or we won't investigate it because school didn't get a walk audit that year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Curtis.
Sure.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Daniels?
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. My question is going to be to Director Curtis. Hi, nice to see you.
I'm not director yet, but thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought I saw that on there. I'm future telling, fortune telling. I just wanted to know if this focus school list that's on page 58, is that exhaustive? Is it complete? Because I was just looking for Star King to be on here.
So I don't have the list in front of me, but I know, so our Safe Routes to School program re-ranked, or they redid their focus school list this year. I don't know if this is the new list or if this is the previous list, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's something I can go back to my office and make sure, and I can make a note specifically about Star King, see whether or not it is a focus school. And again, I mean, the focus schools, this is a Safe Routes to School sort of designation, and it really is, it's related to, but not something that we, on the engineering side, during walk audits, really focus on, other than considering it as one of the additional data points in determining which 10 schools to choose each year.
But if I go to the website that's listed, I probably can see if the school has already been addressed, like in the past, like previous 10 schools chosen, that's on the website, right?
Yes, if you go to the traffic calming program the school walk audit program website, it will show all the previous walk audits that we've done.
Okay.
If you go to the Safer Routes to School website for MTA, then there'll be information about focus schools and how they were chosen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Ortega?
Hello. I actually have a question regarding the cable car barn rehabilitation. So I don't know if that's you or someone else. Happy to meet whoever.
I'll invite the program manager, Quan Chen from MTA.
Wonderful. Hello.
Good evening.
Please speak into the microphone. Thank you. We're told this many times. So I think that my question is, you said that the total cost is going to be approximately $274 million, and we have quite a few requirements based on federal level historical preservation for the building since it's so old. And I guess you note here that it's pending funding availability. What are we targeting as funding sources outside of just the city of San Francisco, considering it's both a national and state landmark?
That's a very good question, and we know that we're very challenged at this time at the SFMTA. We were looking at the broad spectrum of all funding sources. Namely, one of the largest sources was going to be the FTA, but for the time being, that's not a resource available to us. So we're looking at different areas. Again, the 274 is for the entire project to rehab the historic building. So considering that we have limited funds, we're looking at the obsolete and critical nature of the cable car barn, which is the electrical room design.
Okay, yeah, this totally makes sense. I think it was more of a broad question. And so for the electrical infrastructure as the highest priority, was it last updated in 1984? Did I understand that correctly?
Since the earthquake in 1906, the last major renovation I'm aware of was 1984, where they actually rebuilt majority of the building.
Okay. Well, good luck. I love these cable cars. They're on all of my wedding invitations, so I really hope that they stick around so that my wedding invitations aren't obsolete. Thank you. That's all I was curious about.
You're welcome.
Member Levine?
Thank you. I just had a question about the cable car barn as well. Since there will be major renovations going on, I wonder how, first of all, if the cable car barn will be closed down, and secondly, for how long, if it is going to be closed down.
So your question is about major renovation, the total project. So when this master plan was completed in 2021, they had agreements with the stakeholders for a maximum of 8 shutdowns. So that was built into the master plan, but we're going to revisit that when the time comes when we actually do the detailed design, whether or not that 8 shutdowns is still going to withhold the operations and service community in the city.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, in those shutdowns, about how long, might we be talking about? And because obviously the cable car is a major revenue resource for tourists, and if that's going to be closed for a substantial amount of time, it will involve not only the cost of rehab, but the loss of revenue to the city.
Yeah, so the challenge with anything complicated like the cable car is you want to shut it down so that you maximize the return on benefit of downtime. So I don't remember the duration offhand. It's either, I'm gonna guess, but I have to come back to the committee here. Either gonna be 2 to 4 weeks as a duration, and we're maximizing 8 from the master plan when they looked at the overall sequencing of the work. I have to come back and confirm what I just said.
Actually,
It's been a while since I looked at it.
surprisingly, a very small amount of time as far as
Yeah.
I was thinking months and months, so.
No,
thank you.
I don't think so. I don't recall it. I'll come back.
Member Milford Rosales?
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. This is about the cable car barn as well. This might be more of a comment than a question, but I know the cable cars are both great city, a huge tourism draw, also a very good job for a lot of operators toward the cable cars, but they're also a massive revenue sink, or a massive cost sink for the MTA agency. Has there been any talk about potentially trying to get money from the tourism department, or the benefits are much larger than just MTA in a greater way than we see with a lot of transit? Has there been any talk about trying to get money from other parts of the city to help cover the cost of this expense? Or
It's a very interesting question, but one that I'm not equipped to handle because I'm coming from the technical engineering side of delivery, project delivery. But whatever you're saying does sort of worth considering with other stakeholders. Sorry, I couldn't answer your
no,
question.
all good. Thank you very much.
Do any other members have any questions on this item? If not, we can take any public comment in the room on this item. Come on up to the mic.
John Roberts. I'm simply curious, and I'm not online right now, whether this 2021 plan for the cable car barn is publicly out there with these estimates.
It is public.
Okay, it's from the CTA website, or where would I look for it? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment in the room on this item? Not seeing any. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
There is no remote public comment for this item.
Yes, Member Margarita.
I know it's a little bit late, thank you. As Member Milford Rosales was talking, my brain was kind of going, and I'm going to say it out loud. I have no idea where this is going to land, so like you said, that's not your department, but I'm going to say it out loud so that SFMTA can work with other departments in the city. There's so many different folks who are born and raised in the city and county of San Francisco, elderly folks, youth, etc. So again, I'm just saying this out loud to see if it lands anywhere. But is it possible for SFMTA to work with other city departments, nonprofit organizations, to have the elderly have a day on the cable cars and somehow work with other departments to get that paid for? Other tourists, I know that he's not here today, but there's a member in the community that's always talking about, complaining about let me take that back, observing that the big buses take a lot of space and are heavy in the streets. And so, again, just thinking outside of the box environmentally to see what's best for the city and the environment and the people. Also, there's youth who've never ridden a cable car. So working, again, with the mayor and also the Board of Supervisors to have money invested in the cable cars, again, piggybacking on what Member Milford Rosales was talking about, because that's a beautiful thing to ride the cable car. And so there's monies elsewhere in other departments, and so just really having the folks in the city, whether they're young or old, to be tourists in their own city. I can tell you myself, I didn't ride the cable car until I was in my I'm not going to say my age, but just really later in my life, or I didn't know different parts of the city existed, like Little Italy, until I was in my 30s. I mean, so there's a lot of people that live in, you know, low-income, no-income neighborhoods that need to explore the city. And so let's invest in the folks in the city so that they can get to really know their own city. That's it. So I don't know where it's going to land, but it's just a comment. Thank you.
I'm curious if you know, just in response to that, does free muni for youth apply to the cable car fare? I know the cable car fare works a bit differently, doesn't?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to bring it back to our group that handles the service planning and fares. There might be even some fare discounts for seniors currently today, but I'm not for sure. Good questions, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members? May I have a motion and a second on this item? Moved by Member Levine, seconded by Member Ortega. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote?
Oh, sorry.
On the motion to approve item 6, Prop L grouped allocations, Member Bars?
Bars, aye.
Bars, aye. Vice Chair Daniels?
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Member Ford? Ford, absent. Member Imadadeen? Imadadeen, absent. Member Kim?
Kim, aye.
Kim, aye. Member Levine?
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita?
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega?
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel?
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 8 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great, thank you, and thanks again for the presentation. We'll move on to item 7, adopt a motion of support to adopt the eco-friendly downtown deliveries final report. This is an action item, and Transportation Planner Alex Pan will present this item.
Sorry, I'm trying to share the slides. Yes. Okay. Hello, CAC. I'm Alex Pan. I'm a transportation planner, and today I'll be presenting the final report for the eco-friendly downtown delivery study. The last time this topic was at CAC was in January 2023. So first, I'll cover the project approach and then summarize the findings and recommendation for each strategy that we considered in the study. In this study, we wanted to identify and prioritize strategies to support low and zero emission delivery, specifically focusing on equity priority communities in the downtown area, such as the Tenderloin and South of Market neighborhoods, although these strategies could be applicable to other locations as well. We convened a working group of stakeholders, including business owners, community benefit district representatives, and logistics companies, and we also held a focus group with e-bike delivery workers. We considered 3 strategies in this study: off-hours delivery program, logistics microhub, and e-bike battery swapping lockers. The study was funded by a grant from the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance and matching Prop K sales tax funds. This is the list of working group members. It's a mix of community benefit districts, merchant associations, individual businesses, and environmental groups. And as I mentioned, we also convened a focus group of e-bike delivery workers to discuss the potential battery swapping locker pilot. The first strategy we considered was an off-hours delivery program, which shifts deliveries to times when there's less traffic and more vacant curb. In New York, off-hours delivery has resulted in faster and more consistent delivery times, reduced congestion, emissions, and double parking. The working group agreed with these findings and felt that off-hours delivery could advance shared city and business goals. However, key challenges they identified were coordination between shippers and receivers, noise complaints, and additional staffing requirements to receive deliveries outside of normal business hours. The working group said that businesses would likely need financial incentives to participate due to additional staffing costs. So our recommendation for San Francisco is to implement a pilot on known congested corridors such as Chinatown, the Mission, and Inner Sunset, including outreach to merchants as part of the program. In parallel, there should be a broad data collection effort to understand when and where deliveries happen in the city to better estimate the potential impacts and benefits of off-hours delivery citywide. The second strategy we considered was a logistics microhub, which is a location where goods are transloaded from large vehicles to smaller vehicles, such as cargo bikes, hand carts, or golf carts for final delivery. Examples of microhubs in Seattle, Toronto, and New York found that microhubs enable more last-mile deliveries to be completed sustainably, and they can be cost neutral or even generate revenue. Our working group identified challenges to microhubs, such as they're likely only useful for some business types, and it may be challenging to identify suitable locations. So our recommendation for San Francisco is to conduct a site suitability analysis in partnership with industry to identify locations where microhubs can be implemented. This effort should also identify infrastructure changes that are needed to support small delivery vehicles, such as wider bike lanes or more frequent curb cuts to accommodate cargo bikes. Finally, we looked at e-bike battery swapping lockers or public lockers where e-bike delivery workers can swap their depleted batteries for a fully charged battery. The pilot in New York was successful and found that this concept allowed workers to complete more deliveries without running out of charge, and it improved fire safety by reducing the need for home charging. Through our focus group with e-bike delivery workers, we heard that battery compatibility was an issue and that participants were not willing to swap their battery for a different one. Therefore, we're not recommending battery swapping lockers at this time, though they could be revisited in the future as the e-bike delivery fleet expands or converges on a few common bike and battery types. In the meantime, San Francisco should consider other forms of public micromobility charging infrastructure. And although this effort focused on identifying and prioritizing pilot projects, we also identified some other supportive recommendations. The first is a finding that's echoed in several recent planning exercises led by peer agencies that planning for goods movement in San Francisco is fragmented across multiple agencies with no clear organizing forum. And complicating this reality is the fact that San Francisco lacks quality, comprehensive data about goods movement within our city. So we're recommending that relevant city agencies designate staff to collaborate on an urban freight team, develop public-private partnerships to research, implement, and test urban freight plans, projects, and policies. And finally, this report acknowledges that technology is moving quickly in the goods movement space, so San Francisco should take steps to prepare infrastructure for a more diverse delivery fleet. So with that, I can take any questions.
Great, thank you so much for the presentation. Member Ortega.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. The first thing they have is a comment, which is regarding the off-hours delivery. So I actually, I work in San Francisco, and we actually have a warehouse on the pier. That's where we get all of our deliveries to. And one of the things that we're fortunate is that we can have the trucks pull in so that they're not blocking the street. But the signage is really terrible, so they actually often park on the street anyway on the Embarcadero. And so I actually think one thing I would add to this recommendation is very clear signage and very clear parking enforcement and working with parking enforcement, because what happens is people are like, oh, well, if there's a delivery window, whatever, I'll park in the morning, like I'll move in the morning, and they don't. And so you need to make sure that you have people ready. And when I was in New York, I saw those tow trucks like going to get people from moving. And so I think that that is a little bit of a, like, it needs to not just involve like one department. I do think that's really true. I think that the other thing is there are probably a lot of places that have like warehousing. There are a lot of like small businesses that not have the luxury that I have, which is having like a full delivery. But things that I would ask include like how they're getting their shipments, because we get pallets of material. Like, and you can't put a pallet on an e-bike. I mean, you can try, but I wouldn't recommend it. And so I think that this is really like broad, but I think that the concerns that people are bringing up is like if they're getting pallets of material, mobility structures are just, they're just not viable. And like, yeah, I guess you could walk the city sidewalks with a pallet jack, but like, I don't know know if you've been on the sidewalk lately. It's not fun, and I wouldn't recommend it. And so I think when we're talking about the study and we're talking about these things, I think that those are just some considerations I would have on like the incoming logistics of items. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because everything is palletized in shipping. Even if it's last mile is when it stops being palletized. And the big freight companies will have places that they do it, and then that's when you get your parcel shipments. That's when you get UPS giving a mailman, and they have a FedEx guy who's coming in, and you don't have it. They're not palletized, but like the big shipments are always palletized. And so I think a thing I would like to see is this, is the freight study and understanding the types of shipments and goods that you have going across. The other thing, and I thought that this is, given that one of the people on your vendor list, I think this is more of a question, is you have DoorDash as one of the people here. I thought that this was a study, in my first glance, about micro deliveries in the city, especially related to, say, DoorDash or other types of like single point deliveries, so like people getting food delivery or other things. And I find that this is not. I appreciate that, but I think that when you're talking about e-bike battery swapping lockers and other things, like that is a very important part of the conversation that needs to be had as well, because it's actually taking up a huge amount of delivery space in the city, and that isn't getting captured right now. So that would be, I guess, some comments more than anything, but things that I would really appreciate seeing in the next iteration of the study so that we can have a little bit more. I guess if there's a question in this very long-winded relay of comments here is off-hour deliveries. I would appreciate, you mentioned a few neighborhoods. Could you provide a few more details regarding like what the proposal for the pilot plan is, or is that still just being written?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, the neighborhoods that we are recommending are places that we know have a lot of curb congestion and where off-hours delivery could make an impact. I think once we get to that point where we have funding for further study, that's where we would start to design more of these details.
Okay, thank you. I hope my comments were helpful, but those are just some things I would consider because I actually already have some companies that won't deliver to me in San Francisco because it's such a pain in the butt. And, you know, kind of that's partly on them, but it's something to consider too. And you only have UPS. I would also probably, if this gets further down the line, I'd probably also make sure to reach out, at least for data or information, to quite a few other like logistic brokers.
Member Kim?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So is this the final report? If this approved, what is the next step for any, could you tell me the schedule for implementation?
Right now, our immediate next step is seeking funding for the two primary recommendations, which are the off-hours delivery pilot and the micro hubs, site suitability analysis. So in terms of implementation, we don't have a timeline. It's funding.
Yeah. So I have some question of our delivery. You know, myself, I'm small business owner, and we get multiple delivery, and then also I go out to buy shopping, and then Ortega mentions one of my most concerning thing is delivery company says, oh, you know, we cannot come, or I'm not gonna go there anymore. I have experience before. I used to own two businesses, one in Mill Valley, and then in the morning, really I cry because the delivery company, John, you know, you're not gonna go there anymore. So it's kind of remind me nightmare. You know, like small business like me, we should have like constant delivery every two. You know, it's a produce, right? So we cannot keep, especially San Francisco. Some lucky business has a huge storage. They can get delivery once a week. But a lot of them small space, they have like only couple of days, storage. That means if they don't have delivery, it's a huge issue. Then they cannot go out to get sometimes. So I want to question this power delivery. Do you specify or prioritize any certain industry or just overall?
So, yeah, as I said before, we haven't really gotten to the stage where we're designing it for a specific industry, or we just haven't gotten into the details yet. But what I can share is in other places that have done pilots or have ongoing pilots, that food and beverage is like a really big participant in off-hours delivery programs.
Yeah, food and beverage, my concern is, sometimes they're very bulky. So, like one bar, sometimes they get delivered, a lot of boxes of beers and wines. So I don't know how can, the all-power delivery, sorry. So never mind. But I have other question. Normally, food, beverage delivery, like food, a lot of business, including my business, we use Cisco and US Food. They're the main guys. Have you ever talked to them? Because it really depends on their schedule. If they can do it, probably small business like mine is no problem. But if they cannot do it, it causes a huge problem. I cannot find any other, food vendors, cover their the supplies. So have you ever talked to? I didn't see here stakeholder. I saw the truck.
So the working group for this project was, I think, broader to just kind of get a sense of what types of projects to even pursue in the city. When we get closer to designing an off-hours delivery pilot, we would have, like a different list of stakeholders, and we would do some coordination between shippers and receivers.
Yeah, thank you.
Member Bars?
Thank you, and thank you very much for the study and the report. I have some comments that echo some of what Member Ortega has shared. So I would like, I have a question, but I'm gonna just start with a couple of comments I'd like to share. I read your study, and I have concerns about the methodology. And so I think what something that Member Ortega said is talking about is like, what is the type of problem? Are we talking about pallets? Are we talking about trucks that move pallets? Or are we talking about small vehicles that are like getting into traffic? And my concern is that I didn't see us get to the crux of the problem. I didn't see that well articulated. I also didn't see existing conditions captured. So I really am looking for that when I'm reading this. That to me is where you start to really make a difference in trying to improve the lives of my colleagues, like Member Kim, is when you get into the meat of these problems and these trade-offs. And I feel like when you stay too general, you don't get there. And I speak from experience because I do a very similar type of job, and I usually have to demonstrate, if we're recommending a change, what are we changing from, and what is the problem we're solving. And then I would like to say, I heard you talk about some goals that I truly support, like reducing collisions on our streets and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and making deliveries work better for small businesses. Things I really, really support, but in not having a sense of how well those, like, how many emissions come from the delivery industry, right? It's hard to know if the recommendations you're proposing might move the needle. So I felt compelled to share those perspectives, and I would like to see more of that in planning studies like this. And I recognize this is a small study, but I do feel like I've noticed a little bit of a trend in this in the past few years or so. So I don't know if this is a question we should take offline, but or conversation we should take offline. But just methodologically, I feel like we need to be more rooted in the existing conditions and in the problems. And then I will ask, my question is that is this the first time that the CAC has had the opportunity, like, is this I don't think it's the first time we've talked about this study, but is this the first time that, like, the findings or the methodology of the study has come to the CAC?
I believe so, yeah. I think in January 2023, it was when the project was just starting.
Got it. Okay. I do feel like it is hard to be effective as a member of the CAC when I'm seeing the final version of something, and I just have to decide whether yes or no I agree with it. Because again, I very much agree with the goals of this study. I think the problems around delivery and freight movement are extremely critical to making San Francisco work better than it does today. But I personally do struggle with not necessarily the recommendations, but how we got to the recommendations. And that is coloring my view. So I would just ask of staff, even if there isn't like an in-progress presentation, just to maybe occasionally if there's an opportunity to talk about these studies going on, or if we wanted to talk again, like outside of this meeting with you about this, I would really welcome those opportunities. Thank you.
I think all those comments are super fair. They're things that we have discussed internally as well. I think this project, there was a point where we were looking to see what data was out there, is available from the industry, from the delivery industry. It's really hard to come by. And I think it's one of those things that as we started looking into it, we realized there's so much we don't know. But then the scope of this project was not that. It was not to do a comprehensive like data collection effort on freight in the city. So I think we really tried to focus on what have peer cities done, what has proven effective there. And like, for example, with off-hours delivery, one of the things we say is, we know this has worked in other cities. It's been super effective in New York, for example. We don't know ultimately what the impact will be in San Francisco because we don't know how many deliveries are happening during peak hours. So as part of the off-hours delivery pilot, that would include a data collection effort to better understand like if we do this, where should we do it? And what is the overall impact? So yeah, I think the comments are fair. There's something that we have discussed, and yeah.
Share sort of the frustration about the dearth of data to sort of base the recommendations on, right? And that's why we include this recommendation that there be these sort of more global recommendations. There needs to be a citywide urban freight team. We need to start pooling data and pooling our resources and involve data collection on the specific industry in more of our work so that we have that basis.
Member Milford-Rosales.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I may have also misunderstood the original scope when I first looked through this. I was curious when looking through the organizations and businesses that were consulted, particularly for downtown, the financial district, that area. I guess I live in Soma and go through downtown and financial district like a lot during the workday, and I see like the Bike Messenger Association is definitely not what it was, but they're still out there doing a lot of deliveries, especially like catering orders for office lunches and stuff on like big e-bikes and all. They're not, I didn't see them or any of the dispatchers that work with them mentioned here at all. Would they be eventually brought into a potential pilot program?
Yeah, so for the e-bike delivery workers, we did a separate focus group with them, which is why they're not shown on the working group, and that's because we had a very specific pilot that was targeting e-bike delivery workers, which was the battery swapping lockers. So yeah, that's the reason that they're not included in the working group.
And when you say e-bike delivery workers, is this like the Uber Eats, DoorDash contingent of workers? Is this one of the Bike Messenger Associations in San Francisco that runs workers? I know there are a couple different entities with varying levels of organization and labor protection and stuff in this space.
Yeah, I think the population we pulled from was the participants in the Department of Environment's e-bike delivery pilot. Yeah, their incentive pilot. So there was a mix of people who work for different apps and different companies.
All right, thank you very much for that.
Member Margarita?
Thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it. I echo a lot of the concerns that have already been raised by the other members. I just want to emphasize looking at the expansion of the working group roster, including, I didn't see any of the cultural districts included at all. So I think it's really important to look out and speak with the different business merchants that are involved in, for example, Calle 24, because I did hear you mention the mission. I mean, they meet all the time, and I didn't see them listed on here. And so just being more inclusive, the different merchant associations and businesses. Also, I wanted to ask, you mentioned when you were talking about the logistics micro hub, I'm just personally interested, you said that in your presentation that there's a way for it to generate revenue. How would that be? I'm just interested in.
Yeah, so the way that it's been implemented in New York and Toronto is that businesses that want to participate will pay like a permitting fee. So the idea is that that's a way to make it either cost neutral for the city to implement it or even generate revenue.
And then I just wanted to, a lot of times, the well-being of people isn't included in this, and so I really feel for business owners. I don't know how they do it. I really don't, because if there's no business, there's no food on the table, right? And so just kind of thinking about working hours and trying to prioritize health and leisure and mental health and self-care, because I just kind of had a vision of like, oh my gosh, these poor business owners have to be out there at like night hours now to accept these deliveries. And so again, I don't know where it's going to land, but just really thinking about the beauty of having small business owners, which makes San Francisco even more beautiful because of the vast amount of different business owners from different cultures and languages, et cetera, and especially the small business owners that are already struggling. Are we asking them to work 25/8 now while everybody's sleeping so they can accept this? But I understand it's a balance, but I just kind of wanted to put it out there to really think about the well-being and livelihood of the businesses and what's really possible. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's another thing that we've seen in your cities, which is unassisted deliveries. There's options for delivery workers to drop off goods without someone at the business to receive them. And there's different like technologies that businesses can use to facilitate that. But it wouldn't require staff to stay late or come early.
Just the cost effectiveness of that also. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I have a couple of pieces of feedback. I do agree with several other members' feedback about just understanding the challenges with the availability of data, just understanding better the current conditions and more explicit data-oriented goals. I'm generally view the recommendations favorably, particularly the logistics microhub seems like a very promising idea, and I also appreciate the additional recommendations sort of to the point about lack of good data about establishing an urban freight team and better data collection on goods movement. I'm a little wary of the off-hours delivery program recommendation, mostly because I know that we have like a lot of really big trucks and semis on all kinds of city streets, including residential, at all times of day, and then I don't know if that would be part of, it sounds like that those would be the kinds of folks we'd be encouraging to more off hours deliveries, but we've also seen a trend, particularly over the past few years, of injury or fatal collisions involving large vehicles, particularly at night, and then also same thing with delivery workers being involved in injury or fatal collisions, particularly at night. So increasing deliveries at those times of day, I'm a little concerned about. So that's sort of the feedback. And then a question or request would be, given that, could the off-hours delivery program data collection effort you mentioned involve safety data, like, and take like a explicit goal on either reducing or at least maintaining the status quo on injury collisions, as well as the additional recommendation on data collection efforts for goods movement? Could that also take like explicit goal to collect safety data and understand better the current state of things? Because anecdotally, it seems like there is a safety issue around goods delivery, but and I'm not sure there's great data generally about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great, thank you. Member Margarita?
I just thought of something else. If there's going to be like a cost, et cetera, permit that you were talking about, which is going to generate money for the logistics micro hub, just an idea for the businesses that make multi-millions of dollars, for them to be the ones that pay for the like, very small business owners' cost of having that permit, so that the low-income small businesses do not get eliminated, right? So, that's the whole, I don't even know if I can say this, but like mom and pop shop coffees versus the big multi-billion-dollar coffee shops. We want the mom and pop shop coffees to still exist, and not just the big multi-million, billion-dollar ones, so that we can have them all in the city. Because again, to restate, that's what makes San Francisco so beautiful. So if this is implemented eventually in the long run, just to kind of really have in mind to include all of them. Thank you.
Member Ortega?
Hi. So it occurred to me that this study feels more like an informational item than an action item. So I was like trying to figure out why it's an action item. Because it's just like we're agreeing with the study. Is that what we're doing?
It's to adopt the recommendations from the study.
Yeah, I have to echo Member Barr's on this. I feel like this is to me feels like an information item, and I understand why they want the CAC's support, but I feel like if I was to provide information and actions, I'd want to have given feedback earlier than we are currently at.
Member Kim?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, can I add this? Like, if you can later on more detailed study, I'm recommending this in the supply chain thing is sometimes involve the physical location. So right now, the Board of South San Francisco, Cesar Chavez, there's a produce market, and then, Restaurant Depot. Oh, that's the kind of our supply hub. So all the big trucks, huge trucks come to there, and then, they wholesale. So, but right now it's changing. Last 10 years, there's a lot of companies located there, but they move out to further, South San Francisco, even further, Burlingame, and then Brisbane. So before we have little small truck come to the business delivery, but right now they're using bigger truck because they losing their supply hub near the San Francisco or within San Francisco. That's why the warehouse even located further. But now we asking them to using smaller truck. Probably there's a reason why they go out studying using even bigger truck. Maybe housing price or lease price. But if you see why San Francisco are getting even bigger truck, and also a lot of small mom and pop companies merged by big company like Cisco, U.S. Food. So they like to use the bigger truck. But we don't have any alternative options. That's why we have to use them. So maybe they have a strategy. If their strategy doesn't align with cities, probably even though we have a good plan, maybe it's really hard to implement it.
Chair Daniels.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation of this report. I have two questions. My first question is, on the first page, it says the study was funded by a grant from the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance in matching 5K sales taxes. What is the requirement of the grant after the study?
The grantor doesn't have any specific requirements after the study. They want to know the recommendations, and San Francisco, as the city and county of San Francisco, is part of the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. It's a group they're a part of, and that, we participate in on an ongoing basis, share information and strategies. So we bring back what we've discovered through the study to that group of peer cities and exchange. It's like a city exchange.
Okay. That leads me to my second question. This is on the agenda as an action item. If we were to accept and support, have a motion of support for this report, what is the next step?
The next step is to seek funding for the two recommendations, the off-hours delivery pilot and the microhubs.
Is it okay to have like a part A to my? Okay. So that means, okay, you seek funding for the two recommendations, but that includes the additional recommendations of doing the studies.
The recommendations are to conduct pilots. And so doing those pilots will involve more outreach and data collection and investigation. So there's soft costs, if you will, like a preparation costs, and then engagement components to that, as well as just implementing then and operating a pilot period, which would be, say a fixed duration with an evaluation component. And then it would be after that point where there would be a decision to, okay, how successful was this pilot? What did we learn from it? And should it be something that's expanded, changed, discontinued, based on the pilot evaluation results?
So if I could repeat what I heard just for my understanding. So the next step would be to seek funding to go forward with the two recommendations, not the third. And then once you actually have the funding to implement those recommendations, you still have a period where you have to ramp up to actually do the pilot program, which involves outreach and all of the things that we went through with every other program. This is not just like you get the funding, you move into the program, and the next thing you know, we hear back from you after the program's over. Okay, just thank you.
Related to that, does it seem likely that any of that funding would come from SFCTA, and would the TA board and the CAC have an opportunity to weigh in on pieces of the studies or the pilot programs? Say if we had had concerns about specific ones?
Yeah, I think there's more information in the funding chapter, but one potential source is Prop L. There's 2 programs within Prop L that could fund the pilots.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
I may, through the chair, also, I mean, can I channel Rachel? I think Rachel and I and Alex hear the CAC's comments about don't just, see us at the beginning for money and come back at the end. So even if we got money from somewhere else, I'm sure we could arrange like interim updates at appropriate moments.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments from, Member Bars.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair Naj, Daniel, for your question. That was actually very, very helpful for me to formulate my opinions. So I just want to make sure. So basically, what we're saying is, we have in approving this, the CAC is saying staff has a hypothesis that it's not really working for deliveries during normal business hours, so we should try this off-peak one in some places. What those places are, don't know, but we should try these off. You trust us, we'll find some good places to do some off-hours pilots. And then the second thing is, we think that there's some reasons to do a micro-hub. Maybe there's some conditions that lend themselves to doing a micro-hub in some places. Let us go try it and test it and come back to you. Is that essentially what's happening right now? Like, give us permission to go seek funding to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, basically. Like, I mean, for any of these, there's no silver bullet that's going to fix deliveries in San Francisco. It's going to be some mix of these projects. So we looked at what other cities are doing. These seem promising, and we want to go see if that would work in San Francisco as well.
Okay, that does sort of, I would say, change my opinion of what I read and what I thought you were doing with the study. I think it's a little bit more of like, instead of you did like a real study, it's really like you have a slightly more informed hypothesis based on what some other places are doing. And because of the dearth of data that we have, although I would love to poke at that, but not right now, that we need to do an experiment, essentially. We need to do an experiment. Please allow us to move forward with this so we can get money to do an experiment. That's how I'm interpreting this. Okay.
If there are no other questions or comments from members, is there any public comment in the room on this item? Yeah, come on up.
We just say data collection first and clearer goals. This is John Roberts. Yeah. In the material, and it's an idea. It's not a plan.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any other public comment on the room on this item? Not seeing any. Operator, is there any remote public comment on this item?
Yes, there's one remote public comment. Roland, go ahead.
Thank you. So I do agree with what many of the CAC members have been saying. This so-called study is really, has got an ulterior motive. It's not a real study. And quite frankly, there's a lot missing from this study. If it was a real study, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The first one is that I'm not seeing drones or even robots for, last mile, micro deliveries. And that's definitely being discussed in Silicon Valley around San Jose. That's the future. DoorDash is yesterday. And quite frankly, this is going to happen if and when you allow robo-taxis to start roaming around San Francisco. That's how that's going to happen. The other thing that's missing with regards to revenue, I'm not seeing anything about P3s, public-private partnerships. And again, give you an example. It's this massive Amazon distribution center on 7th Street. Well, guess what? Right next door to it, that's where the Pennsylvania Avenue extension is. That's where potentially you're going to have a 7th Street station. That 7th Street station does not just have Caltrain and high-speed rail, it's also got potentially Muni right on top of it because it's designed like one of the Market 3 stations. And believe it or not, we could actually have BART there, you know, coming maybe from 16th Street to Mission Bay Drive. And at that point in time, all those transit operators would have an opportunity at night to start moving goods instead of having diesel trucks going all over the city. If that could somehow make it to that so-called study, I think that'd be a great benefit to all parties concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. There is no further remote public comment.
Great. Public comment on this item is closed. Yes, Member Margarita.
Unless this was the last one, sorry. As you were talking, I was putting my head together, and I know you mentioned New York, right? That was one of the cities that you looked at. Is there any possible way that in your study you can look at what New York was prior to this being implemented, what businesses have been eliminated from it, or maybe not, right? Because I know that New York of today is very different from the New York of even 10 or 15 years ago. And so there might be value to that, to just kind of be inclusive, economically inclusive and culturally inclusive of how this would affect different small businesses, which we don't want to have eliminated.
Yeah, so for the off-hours delivery pilot, for example, that's ongoing in New York, they're doing outreach to businesses, and businesses will choose to participate in the program. So it's not, yeah, so they're not required to participate.
That is one of the options, so that businesses, because I was envisioning, similar to what Member Bars was mentioning, like, you're going to get a ticket if you have a delivery at this time. And so therefore, small businesses that don't have money to pay a worker to work, you know, midnight till, I don't know, 5 in the morning, then be like, you know what, we can't make it, let's close our business. That's what I was thinking. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
If there are no other questions or comments from members, may I have a motion and a second to approve item 7? Moved by Vice Chair Daniels. Seconded by Member Levine. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote? I think maybe we should do a roll call vote.
On the motion to approve item 7, the eco-friendly downtown delivery study, Member Bars?
Bars, no.
Bars, nay. Vice Chair Daniels?
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Member Ford? Ford, absent. Member Imadadeen? Imadadeen, absent. Member Kim?
Kim, no.
Kim, nay. Member Levine?
Levine, aye.
Levine, aye. Member Margarita?
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales?
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega?
Ortega, abstain.
Ortega, abstain. Chair Siegel?
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 5 ayes. The motion is not approved.
Okay, great. Yeah, quorum. Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. We'll move on to item 8, adopt a motion of support to approve a 2-year professional services contract with WSP in an amount not to exceed $3.8 million for construction management services for the Treasure Island Road Improvements Yerba Buena Island Multi-Use Pathways Segment 4 project. This is action item, and we're pleased to have Highway Program Manager Janmin Feng here to present this item.
Looks like you get a twofer. You also have Deputy Director Carl Holmes.
Welcome, Deputy Director Carl Holmes. Good evening, Chair Segal and the Vice Chair Daniels and the committee members. My name is Jamie Fong, Highway Program Manager. Tonight, this presentation is regarding the Construction Management Service Award for Treasure Island Road Improvement Project, which also is including the YBI Multi-Use Path Segment 4. So as you already heard from us regarding this project in September for the funding related item, and I'm gonna go. Apology. So yeah, as you already heard from us regarding this project in September for the funding related item, I'm gonna go quickly to overview this project again regarding the scope, funding, and schedule. Then I'll go into further for the procurement process for the construction management service. So on this map, as you can see, the left corner of the Treasure Island Road Improvement Project is the project we're talking about. And the project is being on the fast track to increase the construction efficiency and minimize the cost, align with the scheduled road closure for constructing the other segment of the path highlighted in green on this map. The scope of this project for the segment 4 is by widen and improve the Treasure Island Road, constructing a retaining wall and 2 travel lanes and 1 new transit lane and a new Class 1 multi-use path. And this slide is talking about construction total funding is total budget is $28 million, and which will be funded by federal, state, and local funds. So schedule of the construction, the project has a revalid environmental document by May 2025, and design phase will anticipate completion in March 2026, and construction phase anticipate the completion of the construction at the end of the 2028. Again, I want to emphasize again, this project is in the fast track the schedule to increase the construction efficiency and align with the scheduled road closure for the other part of the segment of current construction. The scope of work of the construction service budget is really a $3.8 million, which is about 10% of the total construction cost, and which the scope of work include is a pre-construction, construction, and post-construction service of the construction management service. Accelerated schedule starting construction in summer 2026, and the pre-construction service anticipated starting November 2025. So now I'm talking about procurement of the process of the CM service. So the request for proposal issued in late August this year, and proposal due is late September this year, and we received the 4 proposal, and we conducted interview for 3 out of the 4 proposal.
in middle of the October, and the highest ranked firm is WSP. Again, the summary is that this request action is approval for a 2-year professional service contract to WSP in amount not to exceed $3.8 million for construction management service for Treasure Island Road Improvement Project. With that, I'm taking any question you have.
Thank you for the presentation. Do any members have any questions or comments on this item? Not seeing any. Is there any public comment in the room on this item? Not seeing any. Is there any remote public comment on this item?
There's no remote public comment for this item.
Great. If there are no questions or comments from members, may I have a motion and a second to approve item 8? Moved by member Margarita, seconded by member Ortega. Madam Clerk, can we please get a roll call vote?
On the motion to approve item 8, the YBI Treasure Island Road Improvement Contract Award, member Bars.
Bars, aye.
Bars, aye. Vice Chair Daniels.
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Member Ford. Ford, absent. Member Imadadeen. Imadadeen, absent. Member Kim.
Kim, aye.
Kim, aye. Member Levine. Levine, absent. Member Margarita.
Margarita, aye.
Margarita, aye. Member Milford Rosales.
Milford Rosales, aye.
Milford Rosales, aye. Member Ortega.
Ortega, aye.
Ortega, aye. Chair Siegel.
Siegel, aye.
Siegel, aye. There are 7 ayes. The motion is approved.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you. We'll move on to item 9. This is SFMTA's application-based traffic calming program progress update. This is an information item, and we have transportation planner Rachel Seberg to introduce this item, and she'll be followed by Damon Curtis, SFMTA's project manager. Welcome, Ms. Seberg and Mr. Curtis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Seberg, Transportation Planner with the TA. I'll be introducing this item. This is a presentation providing a progress update on SFMTA's application-based traffic calming program. So back in July of 2025, the board approved concurrent programming and allocation of TNC tax funds for the application-based residential traffic calming program for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. The residential traffic calming program has struggled for many years with timely project delivery, with the application to installation process taking years for simple measures due to delivery challenges. As a condition of both programming and allocation, we developed an enhanced monitoring, reporting, and oversight protocol in consultation with SFMTA. On this slide, we have a few examples of our special conditions included in the oversight protocol. This includes monthly progress reports and update to the CAC on the status of the program, and that by December of 2025, SFMTA will report to the board on the future of the application-based traffic calming program, which might mean stopping the application-based program altogether and switching to a proactive program where locations are identified by SFMTA. So for this information item, in compliance with our oversight protocol, SFMTA will present on the status of the application-based traffic calming program.
Thank you for that introduction. I will do my best. Good evening, everybody, again. And I just want to remind you, this is an information item, so. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Let's see. Next, go ahead. The arrows. That one there. All right, so again, we were here in July, and I believe at that point, at that time, our director, Victoria Wise, gave the presentation. These first few slides are here for reference are really the same things that were presented back in July. I'm going to skip through them, but I'm happy to take any questions about them later at the end of the presentation. So this slide 8, is a compilation of all the traffic calming applications we've received since July of 2017. The change from July is highlighted in the green circle that's barely visible on the screen. Basically in July, that part of the graph for fiscal year 25, we only had data through the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 25. So now that the orange column, 131 applications, represents the full year, fiscal year 25. So we know that for that fiscal year, for that cycle, we received 131 applications. I do believe, I'll have to go back and check, that the blue column should be 100. I thought it says 75. I think that might be an error. Regardless, the number of applications received did exceed what was originally projected. Next slide has not changed. However, it does serve again to illustrate sort of the reasons behind the delivery challenges that Rachel spoke about and that gave rise to the funding allocation request in July that we are currently using to advance this backlog of projects. You see those 2 spikes, 116 and in particular the 215. Those applications that and these are accepted applications, not just the number of, so the number of applications we actually received was double this, right? So those 2 spikes are really what gave rise to the backlog. And you can see that in subsequent years, by 23, which is its own sort of unicorn, but FY24 and FY25 things return back to sort of pre-pandemic normal levels. Getting into the specific cycles that were funded by the allocation in July. So FY21, there was a relatively small remaining scope. That scope of work included, we needed to do design and construction for 8 additional locations or 8 remaining locations. We anticipate there'll be 12 devices that come out of those 8 locations based on preliminary analysis that I've done. And also construction of 10 devices at 6 locations. And those devices are already designed, approved, and sitting on the list with Public Works ready for waiting for implementation. So the next bullet, the design of those 8 locations, we expect to start, month. It effectively has started. We booked the funds, our accounting department, this month that were approved in July, and so our staff can begin work. It obviously is being done in concert with all the other work that our limited staff is doing, why the projected completion for those design is not until summer of next year. It may happen sooner, but that's a realistic estimate. Now the construction, and then the construction of those same 8 locations. So 8 locations with 12 devices we're expecting by, winter, so the winter of 2026, 2027. Construction of the 10 devices that are already on the Public Works list. I will say I've been I had a meeting with them yesterday. We meet we have bi-weekly meetings with the asphalt crews at Public Works. They are suffering from severe staff shortages and have repeatedly told me and that they're using our funding to try to support additional hiring. That's something that's ongoing. There's nothing, unfortunately, that has occurred, at least not in the recent in the recent past, but they're continuing to work on it, and it's part of caught up in the larger sort of budgetary personnel hiring problems that the city is facing as a whole. So, but nonetheless, they are continuing to do work, right? So they do have crews out there. Those crews are spread out amongst all the paving work that they do, the pothole work they do, curb ramp work they do, and the traffic calming work they do, right? So, I am still expecting that those 10 locations will be done by the spring. FY22, that's the bulk of the backlog, I am happy to report that we do have 4 JOC contracts. They're really called task orders because they're part of the larger as-needed contract. But those 4 task orders are, the contractors are in place, the contractors are eager to go. I talked to my counterpart at Public Works yesterday. He tells me that, or their contract admin team said that 2 of those contracts will be finalized this week, and the other 2 are being routed for final approval or final signatures, so I expect them to be finalized next week, which means we didn't meet the construction expected to start in October. You know, that's the end of this week, but I am fully confident that we will have, speed humps will start being installed in early to mid-November. And once those contracts do begin, each one is on its own separate timeline, but as soon as they all have a similar scope in terms of size. So once a contract begins, it will be completed in 2 to 3 months, depending on the weather. How many days we have to take off for rain. So, not asking for a drought, but maybe with the rain waiting until late February or March, I wouldn't be mad, because we can get these 240 devices installed as quickly as possible. And I will say that those 4 represent 10 of the 11 districts in the city, 240 out of like 266, I think, of the devices that are from year 22. And that 5th, there are only 4 contractors available in that as-needed contract, so I'm using all 4 of them. As soon as one of those is done, I'll issue a 5th one, get the remaining items installed. FY23, again, I mentioned we recently, the funding came online for our staff to begin charging to it. So FY23, relatively small, that cycle. There are, I believe, 40 accepted applications. So same time that our staff is going to begin designing those remaining locations from FY21, they will also begin designing these locations from FY23. That work design phase should be done sometime in the fall, maybe late summer. And at that point, when I have a better idea of when that design phase will end, we will be coming back seeking construction funds for FY23. FY24 and FY25, those are already funded. We have funding in hand. Those cycles, really, that was a combined cycle, a 2-year cycle, part of the first, that was the beginning of rolling evaluations. And we completed only the first 2 quarters of that 2-year period. So Q1 and Q2, FY24, that cycle, all of the applications were evaluated. We made acceptance notifications to all the applicants, and we accepted 36 applications out of those 2 quarters. Those as well will begin design fully in the spring of next year. That's what I'm projecting. I only have so many engineers, and one of them actually just told me last week that he's moving to Indiana. So I don't know. So if anybody wants a job and wants to design traffic calming, let me know. But yeah, we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and I'm trying to stagger this work, or sequence the work that my team is responsible for in a responsible way that I am confident that we can deliver. So you'll see that we're projecting that we will begin designing those 2 quarters from FY24 in the spring of next year. It will be done by, late fall or winter, same year. And then the remaining 6 quarters from those 2 years, right? Beginning with FY20 or Q3 of FY24 all the way through Q4 of FY25. Those 6 quarters, we received, all the applications were submitted. We have sent out data collection requests to our consultant to collect the data for all of those applications. As of yesterday, we received data back for Q3 and Q4 of FY24. Data is almost complete for Q1 and Q2 of FY25, and data collection is just beginning for Q3 and Q4 of FY25. So we fully expect over the next 3-4 months we should have all the data in for those 6 quarters. And what I anticipate happening is, as we develop the next iteration of application-based traffic calming in San Francisco, what those new criteria might be, et cetera, that new paradigm is what we're going to, that new lens is what we're going to look at those and analyze those 6 quarters of applications against and determine which ones are accepted, which ones are not, and then we'll move forward with the regular process. But doing so and, taking into account a lot of the comments we got from you all back in July, as well as our own research and some of the discussions we've been having already with our peer cities and our counterparts in other jurisdictions, I fully expect that, our criteria is going to become more stringent to bring us more in line with our sister cities out there. And as a result, the rate of acceptance is going to go down, and I was very relieved to hear that I do not think we're going to need to come back to you for more money to finish FY24 and FY25. What is next? Next step. So I kind of already put that cat out of the bag. But yes, so we will we'll continue to our peer review. So really, we'll continue peer review industry best practices. We're collecting data. We're meeting with our counterparts in other cities. I've got meetings on the books for later this week, for next week, and a few people who are still waiting to get back to me. We really want to collect all or as much information as we can about what other cities are doing, how their traffic calming programs are run, how it differs from ours, lessons learned, and so that we can have make an informed decision about where we take our program next here in San Francisco. So we'll be, having those peer discussions. We'll be developing the new program evaluation and acceptance criteria. We'll be determining when we're going to reopen the application process again and what that's going to look like, right? And a lot of that information will be presented. Most of that information will be presented when we come before the board, the full board in December. That last bullet about continuing to work on existing funded program cycles, that really is sort of harkening back to what I discussed about FY24 and FY25. With that, I believe that's the last slide. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you for the detailed update. Really appreciate it. Member Margarita?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I just had a question. I know that you said that funding for 24 and 25 are completed, but why is it that the funding for FY23, you still have to seek funding for that?
So, and I said that FY24 and FY25 we have funding in hand, right? But for FY23, that was a interesting time, a unique cycle. What happened is initially we had planned to skip that cycle altogether because that's when we were transitioning from the annual. It's been so long now, I don't even remember what we called it. But we would, before FY23, we would take an entire 12-month period to accept applications. And then we would, once we got all the applications after 12 months, then we would begin the planning phase, which is collecting data, and that would take another 9 to 12 months, and then we would begin design phase. And so in FY23 I think it coincided with the transition from Prop K to Prop L, and we at MTA, in consultation with staff at the TA, thought that would also be a good time to sort of revamp the program in an effort to make it more efficient. So we were, as part of the FY24 and 25 cycle, we moved to quarterly evaluations, right? Problem is, we communicated this to stakeholders, to the public as best we could, but we still got a bunch of applications. Then we had to decide what we're going to do with them, right? So that, the FY23, I would, jokingly refer to it as the lost cycle, but it really is just, it's one of those cycles where we had not anticipated doing it, but we got applications anyway. At the time, the MTA was in a much better financial position, so our leadership made the decision to use agency funds to do the planning and do the design and the design of that. And part of the design, begin the design. But then we were stuck, and that's when we got into the whole discussion about the backlog and where it would brought us to where we are today. So, as part of the allocation in July, we were allocated funding to finish design and to perform, we just did design, correct? So we only did design funding for FY23. And once that design phase is done, we'll need to come back and ask for construction. That's a very long answer, I'm sorry.
No,
But
it's
FY23 is a very unique situation.
So for FY23, you're going to come back in the future?
Correct.
Thank you.
That was much more succinct.
Member Bars?
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Mr. Curtis.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So I want to I believe I missed Director Wise's presentation, so I just want to make sure that I have the top level points correct, okay? So, basically, MTA tried pivoting from the annual application cycle to the quarterly application cycle. That didn't really work. So then that pivot, there was a pivot back to kind of the old way of doing things with the annual ones. Am I right?
Well, so except for the last part, we haven't pivoted back to the annual thing yet, right? Because we paused applications as of July 1, and that's part of this information gathering exercise and analysis that we're doing internally to determine what the next traffic calming looks like going forward.
So you tried quarterly for maybe 2 years roughly, and now that's feeling untenable. And is it just, could you just explain why it's not working?
Well, so I would be fair. I think the quarterly evaluation was successful for about 2 quarters, and that's the Q1 and Q2 that we actually completed, right? But for a number of reasons. One, it's despite us having conversations ahead of time and sort of previewing what we intended to do and getting certain assurances, there were delays with our data collection. A lot of it is also centered around the fact that we had this huge backlog sort of looming. It was just like the 800-pound gorilla on our back, right? So as we're, here we are in Q3 of FY24, so it's January 2024, we're getting applications in, and we're doing our best with the staff that we have to deal with them, but we're also trying to deal with 215 accepted applications from 2 years prior that we just, it's a slog to try to get them out the door because it's such a big giant lift, and it's twice as big, if not more, than any other cycle had been previous. So I think that's the gist of it.
Okay, got it. And so now
you really need to pause the requests and take stock of what works elsewhere and essentially formulate a new program, right? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially. I mean, really, we're taking pause so that we can actually focus as we need to get this backlog off of our back. Okay. And that's what these 4 JOC contracts are going to do substantially. But, you know, since we are taking a pause, and because we're in this unique situation where we've sort of experimented with quarterly eval, we're not exactly sure if it would work or not because we haven't really been able to give it a full shot. But we do know as well that other cities are doing things differently, right? So this is a good opportunity, I think, for us to, take stock of the way we've been doing things, and do our best to devise a program that works and is as efficient as it can be going forward.
Super, super helpful. Thank you for your explanation. And do you have a sense of, like, roughly how long you're going to allocate for that taking stock period?
So I will, I believe in July, when Director Wise was here, she said, sorry. Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm not going to speculate about that. I will say that we will have an answer to that question in December when we go to the full board. Thank you.
That works for me. Thank you very much.
Member Kim?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for a presentation. So when you come back, could you share the, as you mentioned, other cities, practices as well? And I'm interested in other cities, how to handle this process.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the part of the presentation that we give in December, we'll absolutely, sort of summarize all the things that we've learned, the things that went into us making whatever decision it is that we make in terms of how we see our program going forward. So yeah, it will include the information we've gathered.
Yeah, and then could you tell me, like, which cities are you looking for? Is it around in Bay Area or?
So it's several Bay Area cities, our county, San Jose, Oakland, like the other ones that are nearby, but Los Angeles, Boston, New York City, those are the ones I can recall off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Seattle is probably one of them as well. Seattle, Portland.
Member Ortega?
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for the really detailed update. I appreciate it. I can sympathize with your staff's updates, and I really hope that that goes well and that you can find people and not have people move to Indiana.
Indiana's a great place. I've never been there, but I'm sure it is.
No comment. Anyway, I do appreciate this, and I look forward to continuing to hear as the evaluation goes forward, and wish you luck on more speed bump.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that as part of the enhanced, what are we calling it? Enhanced oversight. That so we sort of missed the mark in terms of when we would start these JLCs, but we'll be continue to be giving quarterly or monthly reports to staff, and we can certainly make sure that those are shared with the CAC members. You know when, but you'll probably see the blog posts and anything else about when we actually break ground on these JLCs. It's we're ready to blow the horns and let out the tweets or whatever they're called these days.
I want to make sure I clarify my understanding and provide a little bit of context for Member Bars and anyone else who wasn't here in July. Am I correct in understanding that the backlog isn't primarily because of or is not really related to the shift from to rolling, and was more because of the waiving of the requirement in 2020 for the petition in order to submit an application.
Oh, there's a little star there. Sorry. Yes, I think that's correct. I mean, just looking at the pre-pandemic data and what came once May of 2020 hit, and we, out of necessity, removed the requirement for you to go door to door and get the signatures of your neighbors in order to apply for traffic calming, the numbers just skyrocketed, right? So that is the primary driver of the backlog.
Great, thank you. And there was a lot of feedback at our July meeting, one, that it's not surprising that a lot more people, if you lower the requirements, would like traffic calming on their street, and that, SFMTA should be more conservative with committing to projects given the funding situation, and that also it might make sense to use the data at SFMTA's disposal to shift to more of a proactive identification of places to implement traffic calming, as well as we know that there are other programs that do already do things like that, like the Quick Build program, and thinking about, so there was a lot of feedback from members about reframing in the program in that way, and then maybe incorporating feedback from the community or petitions from the community, but not necessarily. Anyway, that was the feedback from members, just to summarize. I did have one question, which is I'm really happy to see that, I'm thrilled to see that 240 projects are going to be completed between now and February for the fiscal year 22 cycle. And I was wondering, why are the 8 locations from 21 going to take 6 months to complete? And how do we make more projects go like the 22 projects rather than the 21?
It's a fair question. So we benefited from the fact that for fiscal year 22, we had 240 shovel-ready projects sitting there just waiting to be implemented. So it lended itself very well to packaging them up into these JOC task orders. That's number one. I think that for FY21, the 8 that are not designed yet, so those, why it's going to take so long, I mean, our process is part of the reason. I mean, to design something, the design part is this iterative process really of review and design that goes through our, internal and external processes, ultimately ending up with a public hearing and final decision by our city traffic engineer. That entire process takes, if everything goes perfectly, it takes 3 months, right? So that's the reason for the projections that are in the presentation. And I think and just to speak for the remainder of FY21, those 10 projects that are shovel-ready and sitting on Public Works list for implementation. I mean, again, like I mentioned, I just met with them today, and I was like, hey, you guys got to figure out a way to devote more resources to traffic calming. I know paving is important. I know potholes are important. Traffic calming is important too. So I'm putting as much pressure on them as I can to get that done.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
There are no other questions or comments from members. Is there any public comment in the room on this item? Seeing any, is there any remote public comment on this item?
There's no remote public comment for item 9.
Great. Public comment on this item is closed, and this was an information item, so thank you so much, Mr. Curtis and Ms. Seberg. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 10, introduction of new business. Do any CAC members have any new business? Vice Chair Daniels.
Good evening, fellow committee members. I'm making a request on this evening for a consideration for an economic feasibility study for a bicycle user fee. I don't know who or what department would be doing that, but that is my request. I don't have a timeline, but I would like it as soon as possible. And the reason I'm asking is I really think that given the state of our city and all of our Bay Area transit departments, that this is a place that we should be looking.
I'm going to follow up with you, Vice Chair, to get a little more understanding of what you're looking for.
I have already requested this offline, but I wanted to formally request that we get an update on the Potrero Yard project, given the large recent scope change since we have approved a lot of funding related to the electrification of that yard, with an understanding of a very different rest of the project scope. So would love an update on that. Do any other members have any new business? Seeing any, is there any public comment in the room on new business? Seeing any, is there any remote public comment on new business?
There's no remote public comment on new business.
Great, we'll move on to public comment. This is general public comment on items under the Transportation Authority CAC's purview that are not otherwise agendized at this meeting. Is there anyone in the hearing room wishing to give public comment?
John Roberts, I just want to say thank you for all this work and for making it all very public, both online and here.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any remote public comment?
Oh, yes, we have one remote public comment. Roland, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to circle back to slide 2 on item number 8, which was the presentation on YBI. I did not mention it at the time because what I'm about to say was not related to the DSP contract. What I want to do is to attract your attention to the area immediately to the right of this new proposed pathway, and remind everybody that this is where the new Transbay Tunnel is going to be going. And I know you have never seen this on Link 21, and I'm going to explain to you why I designed it the way I did 10 years ago. There are going to be 2 shafts here, and this is where the tunnel boring machines will be launched. There will be 2 tunnel boring machines headed for San Francisco, essentially for Embarcadero, and the other 2 will be headed for Auckland, most probably in Emeryville, where the old Toll Plaza was. And the way it's designed that way is that if you break up the tunnel into 2 separate tunnels, you can actually dig a new Transbay tunnel in 2 years, which nobody has heard of. But now with all the recent events you've had with BART, I mean, even last Sunday, the issue you've got with the current tunnel is that it doesn't have a crossover. And there are very good reasons why it doesn't have a crossover, which have to do with safety and ventilation. If you have shafts on YBI, that gets resolved. And the crossover means you don't have to shut down the entire track of the entire length of the tunnel. You shut down half the track of the entire length of the tunnel. You get ventilation coming to YBI, and last but not least, you get intervention and you get evacuation to YBI. That's why I designed it the way I did. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. There's no more remote public comment for item 11.
Great. Public comment is closed, and that puts us on item 12, which is adjournment. Thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned.